Hello, friends. I want to welcome you to this edition of Kingdom Review Podcast. I'm your host, Reverend Saa M. McCarthy. Thank you for joining me. As promised, this is going to be part one of a five-part series dubbed Dreams of Liberia. And this first part is called My Brother's Keeper. Now, you may be wondering, why am I taking my Christian podcast to spend some time talking about Liberia? The answer is very simple. First and foremost, I'm a Liberian. I was born in Liberia, born right in Jalatown, right in the heart of Monrovia, right below the University of Liberia. There, I spent my formidable years. I lived there until 1989 when the Civil War broke out in Liberia. And me and my family, we were very fortunate and blessed to escape the carnage going into Sierra Leone, where I lived there as a refugee on some refugee camps. And then I returned in 1991 and I completed my high school education. I graduated from the St. Patrick's High School. From 1992 to 1995, there was nothing going on. I wasn't in college. I couldn't afford to go to college. And I was really in survival mode. Everyone was hustling and we were trying to get things done. We would get up in the morning and we spent our days trying to find food to eat, find rice and beans and cornmeal, and we were doing anything and all things to survive. That's how life was during that time. There was an interim government in Liberia, and at the time, ECOWAS had control over Monrovia, and the rest of the country was under the control of Charles Taylor. So that's who I am. In 1995, I was blessed to leave Liberia and come to the U.S., and I attended the University of Wisconsin-Platteville, where I graduated with a degree in accounting, and my minor was in business. And I went back in my senior year in college. I went back to Liberia and I married my high school sweetheart, the lovely Miss Willette 2P McCarthy. I've been married to her now for 22 years. She's the love of my life. We have 4 kids, and my oldest is 27 years old. My second oldest is 21. My third oldest is 18. And my youngest, my only girl, she's 15 years old. We moved into Texas from Wisconsin. We moved first into Iowa. From Iowa, we moved into Texas in 1999, and we've been living in Texas ever since. That's who I am. My career, I spent the last 22 years in accounting and finance, I worked for multiple companies, had different roles in controllerships. I love accounting, but it's a career. It's what I do to live. But at the end of the day, my passion is the gospel of Jesus Christ. I became born again in a small church in Bryan, Texas. It's a Pentecostal church under the auspices of Bishop Maurice Green Jr., powerful man of God. I received the Holy Ghost under his ministry. I served him there, me and my family, for several years. I believe we were there for about 14 years. And then I moved into Houston, where I now live. And I joined Bethel World Outreach Ministries and currently serve under Bishop S. Musa Kofe. He's the bishop of the 6th Diocese. I continued to serve him. And it was under his ministry, under this ministry, that I became ordained. I now am a reverend, and I love it. I love every minute of it. I love talking about the Word of God, and I just love the Lord. But I think that Christianity is more than just about going to church. It's more than just memorizing Scripture. It's more than just preaching the gospel. Christianity is about making a difference in the lives of other people. So that's the second reason why I want to spend some time of my podcast talking about Liberia, because I believe if I can use my platform to bring about some difference, or to even add to the discussion, because there's so many voices out there now, but to add to the discussion in a positive way, to help our country, to help the country that we all love, that I love dearly, I think it's beneficial. Don't you? I think so. So let's get into this. Being your brother's keeper. What does that mean, to be your brother's keeper? Jesus, one of the key difference in who Jesus was and his person. Jesus was a servant leader. And a servant leader just means that Jesus served the people that he led. Although he was above them, he served them. He ministered unto them. Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. Can you imagine that? The God of the universe bowing, just getting on his knees and washing the feet of his disciples, showing the level of humility to serve. That's the essence of leadership. Today, so many people in government in Liberia, they get there and they think that people should serve them. And in fact, the reverse should be true. You are put in office to serve the people. And let me make it very clear before I move any further into this podcast. I am not for WIA. I am not against WIA. This is not about the WIA. I'm not trying to make a personal statement or a political statement against WIA. I want WIA to succeed. It is in all of our best interest for him to succeed. So this is not about the person of George WIA. Let me just make that out there. I'm not for him. Neither am I against him. I'm for truth. I'm for certain principles. I'm for progress. I'm for Liberia and what's in the best interest of Liberia. So let me make that very clear. So Jesus expects us, if we are Christians, to be a difference in the lives of the people we come in touch with. Not just the people in our household, but people that we don't even know. That's the essence of Christianity. You know, the stat says 85% of Liberians are Christian. Is that true? Because if it's true, then there's a huge irony because of the way we are living and the way we are treating each other in the country and outside of the country. We can't have a civil discussion now without cussing each other or calling each other names. I've seen some people on Facebook having the audacity to insult the president, call him all kinds of names. Now, I know you're frustrated, and you have the right to be so. I know the decisions and the policies that the country, that this administration has employed, and some of the things that they've done is not right. And I know that there are some things that they need to do. They need to fix some of the things that they're doing. But that does not give us the right to cuss and abuse and insult the office of the presidency. We can disagree and do so in a civil manner. We can disagree. And there's much to be disagreeable about in Liberia, in this administration and the things that they're doing. Much to be disagreeable about. But we can be disagreeable and we can be civil. Love is at the core of this. So just because I disagree with you does not mean I hate you. Does not mean you're my enemy. That's the thing we do in Africa overall, in Liberia, and particularly, since that's my focus, is that just because I disagree with this administration does not mean I'm an enemy. The Constitution gives us that right to disagree and have our own opinions. It's actually a good thing for us to think differently. It's actually a good thing for us to disagree. The question is, what can we learn from our disagreements? Everyone can be right. I'm not right all the time. You're not right all the time. It's maybe your opinion, but that doesn't mean your opinion is 100% accurate all the time. So there are things we can learn from each other. But before we can learn from each other, we must be willing to sit down and talk to each other, not talk past each other, not insult one another. How can you expect this government, the WIA administration, to come down to the table and sit and talk with you if you're going to be insulting them or insulting him, calling him all kinds of names? It's unreasonable to expect him to sit down and talk with you. We need to come together as a people. We need to start talking to each other in a civil way. We need to demonstrate love. And love means it's not about you. Love means you're doing everything Your decisions, your actions is to benefit not just you, but benefit someone else. And we don't do that today in government. All the governments, the past governments in Liberia, whether it's Samuel Doe, whether it's Judy Bryan, whether it's the council, the 5-man council that they had, whether it's Charles Taylor, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and now the administration of President George Weah. We are not doing things. Our policies are not geared towards benefiting all of Liberia. Every Liberian has a right to participate in the resources of the country. Not a few, not a handful. Everyone has a constitutional right to access the resource or to benefit from the resource, to education, to providing health care, to providing securities, to providing jobs. Every Liberian has that right. Not just a few, not just those who voted for you. Everyone has that right. And to understand that, to embrace that, you must first have love. Love for country, love for your people. You cannot say you love the country and not love everyone in the country. Even those that disagree with you. You can't say you love them and you don't, and then when they go against you, you say that they're your enemies. No. We have to stop that. That mindset is at the root cause of corruption, is at the root cause of why we don't follow the rule of law, is at the root cause for why our country is not developed, is at the root cause for why we don't have many Liberians in the country who are educated, is at the root cause of why we have poor healthcare system in the country, is at the root cause of poverty. 50% on average of our citizens are illiterate, meaning those who are 15 years and older, half of them in our country can't read or write. That is shameful. That is unacceptable. 80% of our country today resides in darkness. That is shameful. That is unacceptable. 65% of our population live below the poverty line. They're living on $1 or less. That is unacceptable. That is shameful. We don't have a functioning economy where people can participate, whether you are educated, not educated. You can have a job and feed yourself and take care of your family, having the dignity to feed yourself and take care of your family, not government giving you handouts. It is unacceptable. We can do better than that. Liberia now has made the list. We are officially the poorest nation in the world. The poorest nation in the world. The oldest nation in Africa. Independent nation in Africa. The oldest. And we are yet the poorest. We should all be ashamed. Every leader in that country ought to be ashamed. They ought to be waking up and now thinking seriously on how to reverse this trend. But we can't do that if we don't have love. If you don't have love for country, you don't have love for the people, you can't do that. If you love the people, you will educate them. You will make sure that all students, everyone, all our children are in school. I understand that now we can't go back to school because of the COVID-19, the coronavirus. But when this is all over, every child needs to be in school. Education is important. We need to prioritize that. But there are lots more things we need to do because right now the country, the government operates on a budget of about $550 million, which is very low. I really believe that that budget is maybe about a quarter of what it should be. We could easily be, if we're functioning right, if that country was really, if the economy was functioning right and we're operating on all cylinders, the government could easily have a budget of about $2 billion annually. But now our budget is only $500 million or $550 million. So there are lots of things we can't pay for. We can't pay for education. We can't really make healthcare affordable. We can't really construct or develop the country. And we're kind of stuck. How do we get out of this? Well, I would submit to you that you have to first have a spiritual revival where we can go back to the cross. We say we are a Christian nation, yet we don't act like we are Christians. If we are a Christian nation, it should show. We should demonstrate love by putting others first, by making policies, following policies that put the country first, above you and above your own crony, your own circle of friends. We need to put the people of Liberia first. Every single citizen in Liberia is important. Every one of them. Everyone. And we must do everything to protect them. Which we should do everything to protect our children, our elders. We should do everything to provide opportunities for our young men and women. Liberia is a very young country. I think maybe I may be wrong, and you can certainly correct me on this, but I believe 60 to 70% of the people in Liberia, they're 45 years old or younger. 65 to 70% I really believe this. They're probably about 45 years or younger, and that's a huge number. That means that we're a very young country. That's why I think it's fitting that we have a young president in WIA. But for us to be the poorest nation, despite the natural resources we have, despite the natural blessings we have diamond reserves, gold reserves, iron ore reserves, we have timber, we have natural forestries, we have natural harbors. The country is situated in right on the Atlantic. We are not landlocked. We are blessed in so many ways. Why are we the poorest nation in the world? It says something is off, something is wrong, and we need to put a stop to this. And every Liberian need to put their hands around this government. We shouldn't be trying to rush to push WIA out of office. We need to put our hands around this administration and try our best. If the administration will listen, we need to do our best to help them to succeed. Yes, we need to be helping, providing ideas and solutions to WIA, to the administration of President George WIA, so that he can succeed. His success is our success. But the administration of President WIA must be willing to listen, must be willing to come to the table and hear ideas that may not be your own ideas or ideas from your own party. Are you willing to come to the table to listen to those ideas and to actually apply and take some of those ideas and execute on those ideas that may not be your own ideas? WIA doesn't have all the answers. If we are frank with ourselves, and let's be honest, we did not elect WIA because we knew he had the technical ability to turn the country around. No. WIA was elected because most Liberians love President WIA. The average Liberian loved him. They saw themselves in WIA. They could identify with him. A man who rose from poverty to become a soccer star from Liberia. People were inspired by him. So his leadership is not one about technical abilities. He is an inspirational leader. So if you are, President WIA, an inspirational leader, you then have to have the ability to inspire us to greatness. Not try to divide us. You should be inspiring us to greatness. And the way to do that is to bring us together. You have to bring us together. Not just those in your party, CDC. You have to have the ability and the capacity to bring Liberians together so we can start showing love for each other. And you need to prioritize the country. Put the country first. Put the people in that country first. Every decision that you make, or members of your cabinet make, the question has to be, how is this decision going to benefit the Liberian people? And if the answer is it's not going to benefit the Liberian people, you should not do it. If you are making a decision, you have to ask yourself, is this decision, is what I'm about to do legal? Is it constitutional? If the answer is no, you should not do it. Liberia did not make the mark of the poorest country in the world because we lack resources. No, we don't like natural resources. Liberia is not the poorest nation in the world because we don't have the human capacity. No. Some of the brilliant people I know are Liberians. You have Liberian lawyers, you have Liberian doctors, Liberian engineers, you have Liberian scientists. Yes, in the diaspora. You'll be surprised. Liberians are doing well. But you need to have a way, a strategy to attract all of those minds to come together on the table to help turn this trend that we have going on in our country today. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take humility. It's going to take servanthood, that mindset of Jesus Christ that says, I'm your leader, but I'm a servant leader. I'm here to serve you. You have to be humble, and you have to have love for country. Put the country above you and your own interests. Can you do that? Do you have the capacity? Do you have the ability to listen to people who disagree with you without calling them your enemies? We have a right as citizens, a constitutional right to disagree, a constitutional right to be unhappy and to express our unhappiness. We have a right to protest legally. And people are starting to protest because they don't trust this government. They don't trust this administration. And who can blame them? It's only been 3 years. But the WIA administration still has, in my opinion, an opportunity to turn things around. And it starts with loving country and loving the people, putting that above all else. If you don't have the love of God in your heart, how can you love people? How can you love your country? How can you be a nationalist? How can you put Liberia above everything else? Liberia first, if you don't have the love of God in your heart. We must come back to basics. If we say we are a Christian nation, and we got to act like a Christian nation, we ought to love people, even if they don't look like us, even if they don't talk like us, even if they're from different tribe. It can be from the Kisi tribe, or the Roma tribe, or the Bassa tribe, or Gio tribe, or Mano tribe, or Pele. It doesn't matter. They are Liberians. First and foremost, we are Liberians. Above tribes, we are Liberians. We should love each other and respect each other. Some of the things I see on Facebook is appalling. Some of the ways we treat each other on Facebook as Liberians is disgraceful. We need to stop it. It's shameful. It's okay for us to disagree. It's okay for us to have different opinions. Just because my opinion different from yours does not mean I'm your enemy. Does not mean you have to insult me. I saw the last time a young man, I'm not going to call his name, but he was insulting the president of the Republic of Liberia, calling him names. That is unacceptable. We can disagree and have a civil discussion on the subjects. We don't have to insult each other. Love is the key. If Liberia is going to turn around, if Liberia is going to reverse this trend that we're in, it has to start with love. We need a spiritual revival, because love gives you the mindset that you are, in fact, your brother's keeper. Love says, I'm more concerned about my brother than I am about me. Love puts the interest of someone else over yours. That's what love does. It's not all about you. I hope you've learned something from this podcast. I hope I made some sense. Send me your comments. Send me your feedbacks. If you like this podcast, I encourage you to hit like, and I encourage you to hit share. Share it with other Liberians. Share it with others who need to hear this. Follow the podcast if you like it. And I want to leave you here. I want to end this with this story of Philemon Samuels. See, I wrote a book. It's called Dying to Live, God is Able. It's a Christian book that talks about my life and talks in detail. A lot of things I couldn't go into now because of time, but it talks about details about my life, how I grew up in Liberia, how I came here in the U.S., and it also talks about my incredible relationship with a Liberian called Philemon Samuels. Let me talk about that right now. Philemon Samuels, back in 2005, Philemon Samuels was a Liberian living in Liberia, a businessman, a family, married. He was 35 years old at the time. He had 4 kids, and on one morning he was hit by a reckless driver, and Philemon Samuels was left for dead. All his bones, most of the bones in his body was broken. He was in JFK recuperating for months, and Philemon Samuels will soon learn that he ruptured his urethra, and the urethra that I came to know is a tube that is connected to your bladder that helps you to pass out urine, to pee. Let's put it that way. And that tiny jelly-like, spaghetti-like tube got cut because of the accident. Philemon Samuels was devastated. They tried in Liberia and Ivory Coast to operate on him several times, and it failed. So they ended up putting a catheter in him so that he can urinate. And the catheter was being infected. Philemon Samuels was not getting the cure that he needed, the help that he needed. And this man sold his house, he sold his car to get treatment in Ivory Coast, and to no avail. He lost everything. And at that time, I used to follow Liberian news a lot. And in 2007, a member of his church decided to write a story about the life of Philemon Samuels. And that story was published on Front Page Africa. And I came across the story. I didn't know who Philemon Samuels was, but I read his story and I was touched by it. This is a young man who had everything going for him. He had a thriving business. He had a young family. He was a Christian man. In fact, I didn't know it at the time, but he was a member of Bethel World Outreach Ministries. And the news says that if he was, the bladder was getting infected, and if Philemon didn't get the care and the surgery that he needed, he would probably die in about 6 months. I read the story and I was moved by it, and I decided to do something. I reached out to Philemon Samuels, and long story short, you can find the story, a detail of the story is in here, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. You can get the book. The book is available on Amazon. You can buy it, or if you want a copy of the book, send me a comment. Let me know. Maybe I'll sign one and send you a copy. But put your address in there, and we'll see. Okay. But I reached out and I talked to the pastor who was taking care of Philemon, and I said I wanted to help. I'm not a millionaire. I don't have any money at all. I'm just a fellow Liberian citizen who wanted to help Philemon Samuels. And I wasn't interested in sending him $50 every month. I wanted him to have the care, the medical care that he needed. I was able to raise some noise in my community here in Texas. I was able to call and I pestered people, and I called hospitals and I called hospitals. I pestered them, working on behalf of Philemon Samuels until someone listened to me and they were able to join me, come around me. Great leaders in our community here in College Station, Texas, they were able to help me to help Philemon Samuels. Philemon Samuels came to the U.S. thanks to the generosity of Scott and White Hospital. Scott and White offered to provide medical services of about $200,000 to $250,000 for Philemon Samuels for free. That was just a miracle. God just did an awesome work in this man's life, blessed him. Philemon got a visa to come to the U.S. He came here to the U.S. And when he came, the news, the local news, went out to meet him. And so I'm going to pause so you can listen to the story. This is when Philemon first arrived in the U.S. and I met him for the very first time, me and the individuals that were supporting him. So take a look at this and be blessed.
3 years ago, Philemon Samuels of Liberia was hit by a car and suffered serious injuries, including a ruptured urethra that was threatened his well-being and his life. But the husband and father of 5 has new hope thanks to a native of his homeland now residing in College Station, along with help from local leaders. News 3's Steve Fullhart was at Easterwood Airport for Samuel's arrival tonight.
The landing in Aggieland marked the last leg of a day-long journey for Philemon Samuels, much to his delight and many others.
I can't believe he's actually here. I cannot believe this.
Saa McCarthy heard of Samuel's story 4 months ago, reading Liberian news, and wanted to bring his brother to America for treatment.
It was just heartbreaking, and I started to make some phone calls, didn't know who to talk to, and I just started calling numbers, and eventually I got in touch with Melissa Pearl.
At first I thought he was a nut, and then we started checking into this, and it was legitimate, and we had to do it. How could you not?
So Samuel's first steps onto Aggieland soil were met by long-distance friends.
Come on.
Through the efforts of McCarthy and a cavalcade of help, the man who had spent every penny of his own to get well and keep his family fed got a trip to and treatment in America paid for. Even Congressman Ted Edwards made a travel visa possible, efforts for a man in need of help that his nation could not offer.
Thank God for this country, and the people of this country. And I pray that God will always help you people and make the country a great country.
It's something that we felt we could do to help him, and that's what I think drove us all to continue to keep working, because we think he can be helped.
Saa, how does it feel?
It's very good.
Months of treatment await him, but for Samuels, there is no shortage of love that will help him make it home healthy. Steve Fullhart, News 3.
There is still an account through Brazos Valley Bank for donations to Philemon Samuels. He heads to Temple tomorrow for his first exam at Scott and White. We'll have more on his journey to America for health tomorrow, News 3.
Last night, we told you the incredible story of Philemon Samuels, the Liberian native who suffered a devastating pelvic injury after being struck by a car. Through local support, Samuels has made the long journey to the U.S. and is already getting some much-needed medical attention. News 3's Kristen Ross has his story.
It's been a long journey for Liberian native Philemon Samuels.
All the way from here, from Monrovia to Brussels, from Brussels to Chicago, Dallas, College Station.
He didn't know me from anywhere. He saw my story and decided to help me. He took interest into my story and fight a good fight. And today, as a result of his fight, you are seeing me here.
Here is now Scott and White in Temple.
Very nice. Very nice to meet you.
After some formal introductions and loads of paperwork,
No special diet.
Samuels heads off for a series of checkups that could help doctors determine if they can give him back what life took away.
He was hit by a drunk driver. His pelvis was crushed. He had some type of bladder or urethral injury, we're not sure.
Samuels now wears a catheter 24/7, and his life has been forever changed. Reconstructive surgery is Samuel's hope of returning to normalcy.
What it involves is we take where the urine comes out of the bladder and have to find that opening and then reconnect it to his urethra, the channel that he would normally void out of. You can see right here where
As Dr. Bird goes over the x-rays, it reveals previous fractures in the pubic bone that have been causing Samuel's trouble. Bird hopes to correct that.
I mean, this is why people go into medicine. There are just circumstances like this that you feel compelled to help out with.
I believe that God brought me here to get well.
The coming days will tell more if U.S. doctors and technology could make all the difference.
Okay, this is just the beginning, all right?
Kristen Ross, News 3.
Every time I see that story, I almost cry because here was a man who was at the end of his life, a man who was at the end of hope. And Philemon never gave up hope. Those who knew Philemon, when they came to visit him, he would always say that God had a plan for his life. And you're wondering, where is Philemon today? Well, Philemon recovered fully. Philemon had a successful surgery. He lived in my house he lived in our house, me and my wife. He lived with our family for about 8 months. Philemon then, he got healed entirely. I was able to work with the college system here in Texas, and Philemon got a scholarship at Blinn College here, a two-year scholarship. Philemon got some education here in Texas, and Philemon was reunited with his family in Liberia. And Philemon today is living with his family. Philemon recently had a son. I think his son is about maybe 3 years old. And Philemon named his son Saa. How touching is that? So his son is named after me, Saa. And I'm so happy for Philemon. Philemon, through the work of other partnerships with other nonprofit that I partner with, a foundation that I partner with, they agreed to build Philemon a house. And Philemon, the last year, I think sometime in July, the house was finished. Actually, two houses in a piece of land that they bought for Philemon. He's not wealthy. He's like everyone else. He's still struggling, but his life now is so much better than where it was before. And so if you saw that story and you're touched by it, you're inspired by it, know that God loves you, know that God has a plan for Liberia. And if you want a copy for this of my book, again, as I said, the book can be found on Amazon. It's called Dying to Live, subtitle, God is Able. And if you live in the U.S. or in the diaspora, in Europe or so, and you want a copy of this book, send me your name and your address in the comment box. You can inbox me, and I'll be picking maybe about 5 to 10 people, and I'll sign a copy and send them a free copy of the book. Thank you so much for listening on this episode of Kingdom Review Podcast. I've been your host, Reverend Saa M. McCarthy. Next week, we'll be talking about corruption in Liberia. You don't want to miss that episode. I've been your host. See you next week. God bless.